Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Donald Trump's feud with the media got even weirder and more intense over the weekend after the president tweeted a video of his staged brawl with wrestling mogul Vince McMahon with his CNN logo superimposed over McMahon's face. It was a little confusing since CNN and pro wrestling could not be more different. One is an entertainment venture that promotes over-the-top fictional narratives and rigs its fights. The other is the WWE.
Pow!
Tell me why you think that it was not taken out of context when she calls for a jihad against the White House.
Well, I mean, it clearly wasn't taken out of context. Everybody I know who posted this story posted the entire video as well as a large portion of the transcript from what she said. I don't think anybody is claiming that she openly called for violence against President Trump, but jihad means more than just internal struggle or quote-unquote struggle for good. I mean, we all know that there are terrorists all over the world who invoke the word jihad as justification for what they do. And Linda Sarsour knows that, too. I mean, she knows how to make a headline. She is a radical anti-Semite who has backed terrorists in the past. She's a person who has said that I
Stop smearing her. Don't smear a woman who's not here to defend herself. You just don't like a vocal American Muslim woman proudly standing for justice. Don't smear a woman who's not here to defend herself. Shame on you.
Okay, I'll talk about CARE instead. CARE is an organization that was an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation.
Right, shift the topic. Exactly. Never indicted. Don't try to drown out the conversation. Let's talk about what jihad means. Jihad means striving for truth.
Let me ask you,
that's
Hassan,
exactly what she's doing.
If you want to talk about context, let's talk about the full context.
Yes, go ahead and ask me.
Okay, this is what I want to ask you.
The fact that she began this speech by praising a guy who has in the past talked about how jihad includes violent jihad. She started her speech with that. So let's not pretend that you can you're the one taking this one line out of context and then suggesting that it only refers to
Well, I encourage everybody just to listen to the speech for herself.
So in your opinion, is socialism a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, I think people kind of throw that word around to try to scare you. But if helping people is socialism, then I'm for it.
It could really benefit our country in the future.
I think it's a good idea.
Socialism as a concept, as a philosophy is good. I think that it's got a bad rep.
Trying to spread the wealth is definitely a good thing in America, and it's definitely a thing that's needed.
There's a lot of things with social welfare that I think would be good to have.
Do you have a positive reaction to socialism or a negative one?
I'd say a more positive one. I'm definitely more open to it.
We should have a standard of living for all people. Okay. Just by default, that should just be available.
If we did it democratically, then we could really incorporate socialism.
Like, it definitely seems like a more feasible option, and it could help more people. Like, just as a broad term, it could help more people.
How would you define socialism?
I mean, honestly, that definition gets thrown around a lot. I'm not exactly sure.
How would you view what socialism is, though? Economically, what is socialism?
Economically, So, I'm gonna think about that for a second.
I guess just specifically just, getting rid of that wealth gap in the United States.
How would I describe it as little words possible?
How would you define socialism?
I mean, it's definitely more of an open form of government, and it feels like a lot more accessible to a lot more people. And that's kind of how I see it, like being more accessible and more kind of like equal ground. Yeah.
What does that mean necessarily, though?
To be quite honest, I don't know.
Hello, Mr. D'Souza. I'm a op-ed writer for the school paper, and full disclosure, I wrote an article saying that I think you're a hack. Now, I came with an open mind, and I was disappointed to find that much like much of the current president's comments, yours are based on sort of shallow logic, lack of expertise, no real facts, and economic ignorance. And some conservatives have said that too. But I have a question about the broader conservative philosophy, and this gets back to what you said about trade. Now, you said that, we gotta, get trade back in order. But with the trend in technology nowadays, the real threat is not trade and loss of jobs overseas, but automation, artificial intelligence, the replacement of many of the jobs that serve as a starting level for economic advancement. What role does conservatism have in a world in which machines and automation can take the place of much of human labor and activity that generates income and value for everyday people?
All right, well, man, let me say this. If it is the case that in what I said tonight, and I put some fairly incendiary material on the table, if I had said something that was even arguably wrong, factually wrong, about the Democratic Party or about fascism or about Trump, it would be very easy for someone to point it out. So normally, if you're going to call someone a hack, you should kind of try to establish your own bona fides. You know, it's okay. It's okay. Look, a certain amount of moral indignation is the staple of being a late teen. And so I think we should be indulgent. Now, technology. Look, here's the point. We have seen in the United States the ordinary working guy, I don't just mean the white guy, the black guy, the Hispanic guy, the working class in this country has been hit by 3 powerful winds blowing in the same direction. And those winds are named globalization, immigration, and technology. Now, what does the Democratic Party plan to do about any of these? And the answer is nothing. Nothing. Obama did nothing. Hillary proposed to do nothing. In fact, what the Democratic Party wants to do is to increase the problem of illegal immigration, motivated solely by getting Democratic voters, with complete indifference to the impact on the worker.
So tonight you have presented the Republican Party as advocating on behalf of individual liberties, even if that means deregulation so that there could be a smaller government and essentially people can have more freedoms, personal freedoms. Despite the fact that that might undermine the Clean Water Act and lead companies to pollute the waters with toxic waste with no repercussions. However, my question to you is, how can you explain the deregulation that the Republican Party supports for smaller government and simultaneously the hundreds, if not thousands, of bills passed by Republican officials since 2011 that have policed the woman's body and limited female access to contraceptives and to abortion?
All right. Somewhat like the mosquito in the nudist colony, I'm trying to figure out where to begin. Well, all right. So I'll say a very quick word about abortion, a very quick word about deregulation. Abortion first. We talk about birth control and abortion. Let's set aside for one moment the debate about whether or not abortion is a constitutional right. I would submit that it is not. You can read the Constitution, squeeze lemon juice on it, hold it upside down, it's just not in there. But let's assume it was. Let's assume it was sort of invisibly there as part of the Bill of Rights. Right up there with free speech and right up there with the right to religion and the right to assembly and so on. Here's my question to you. Why should the abortion right be subsidized when none of our other fundamental rights are? I mean, you have a right to free speech. Does the government give you money to start a newspaper? You have a Second Amendment right to own a gun. Is the government going to buy you a shotgun? You have a right to free assembly. You got to do it on your own time. You have a right to free exercise of religion. The government's not going to pay for your churches. So, since the government pays for none of our other fundamental rights, why does this right get to be in a category of itself? That's my point number one. Pivoting to point number two. No corporation that pollutes the water should be allowed to do that because that is an actual infringement upon the common good. In other words, that is actually doing harm to the public. This is completely different from the real point of deregulation. The real point of deregulation is to create a scope in which individuals can transact freely. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean. We have a right to health care, and presumably we have an equivalent right to food, right? To eat. What could be more basic than the right to food? Now let's assume that the government establishes not Obamacare, because that's healthcare, but an Obama right to food. And the basic idea here is that when you go to the grocery store, you can get food, and somebody else will pay. So you walk into the grocery store, you fill up your cart. I would submit, first of all, that you will excessively fill up your cart because you're not paying. And you're going to show up at the counter, at which point the woman behind the counter will notice that not only have you excessively filled up your cart, but since you're not paying, you don't care what the prices are. And so suddenly milk will start costing $45 because some third guy is actually going to be footing the bill. Now, I would submit that this is in a nutshell what's wrong with our healthcare system. That whenever you go to the doctor, the reason that it costs $3,000 when you have a cold is not because it actually costs $3,000. If you were paying, they'd bill you $75. But since you're not paying, and the insurance company is paying, and the government is paying them, the doctor realizes, I'm going to run 45 tests, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, it's all going to be money in my pocket, it's going to be money for the hospital, and this poor dude isn't the worst off. So most of the time when we go to the doctor, we don't even ask what it's going to cost, because we don't care, because some third guy is paying. So the argument for deregulation is to try to create a healthcare system where people do have healthcare protections, but in which costs are kept down because the guy who's receiving the service is actually paying for it.